Have you ever noticed how some prices go up? People still buy the product while other prices change and customers disappear? This is a prime example of elasticity. The elasticity of something helps determine many things within an economy. Specifically for business owners, it helps them determine their pricing and look at market behavior. This episode, we will cover some elasticity basics along with key terms, some real-world examples, and an interview from a small business owner. Now, what is the exact definition of elasticity? Elasticity is the measure of how responsive one variable is to changes in another variable. This essentially measures how sensitive consumers are to price changes within a product. There is a formula to describe this. The percent change in quantity demanded, what the consumers want, divided by the percent change in the price, how much it'll cost to buy it. Let's talk about elastic and inelastic. A good is elastic when a small price change leads to a high sensitivity from consumers. A good is inelastic when any sort of price change has really no effect on the consumer. They're going to continue to buy the good no matter what the price change is. A good example for this is gas. Just because the gas prices go up or go down doesn't really mean people are going to buy gas more or less. People need gas every day to drive to their jobs, to drive to school, to just live their life. It isn't going to change how much they buy gas. Gas is inelastic. There's not many other substitutes for gas except for an electric car, I suppose. But you're not really going to go out of your way to buy a whole nother car just because the gas prices go up by $1 or $2. Another example for an inelastic good could be necessary medicine, like insulin for a diabetic. Another example, alcohol or even coffee. These aren't really considered a necessity. However, some people do become addicted to these substances and feel like it is a necessity. If the price of alcohol goes up, people are still going to buy alcohol. If the price of coffee goes up, they're still going to buy coffee. It doesn't really change whether they're buying it or not because they feel like they need it. Some more examples of elastic goods: going on vacation, eating out, specifically at high-end restaurants, luxury cars. All these things are definitely not a necessity, and people can live without going on vacation, and people can live with their Nissan instead of their Lamborghini. These things tend to be very elastic. If the price goes up, people are just going to avoid them. There are a couple determining factors that make something more or less elastic. The availability of substitutes makes something more elastic. A real-life example is Coca-Cola versus Pepsi. If Coca-Cola is out of stock, unavailable, or the prices go up, your next go-to is going to be Pepsi, and you're not going to care too much. Coca-Cola is very elastic. Another good example, beef versus chicken. They're both meats that you use to eat. If the price of beef goes up, you're just going to buy chicken instead. If the price of chicken goes up, you'll buy beef instead. These products are elastic. Consumers are very sensitive to their price change to the point where they will buy something else. Another factor is necessity versus luxury. Something that is a necessity that you need to live off of tends to be more inelastic. You aren't affected by the price change. A luxury, however, tends to be more elastic. If the price of all soda goes up, you're probably just going to drink water. A third factor is time horizon. Demand will become more elastic over time. As time passes, people will find alternatives or change habits. With less time, there's limited time to find different options quickly and efficiently. These are some basics of elasticity. Now I'm going to speak to a small business owner located in South Florida. Paint the Grain is a paint and sip business that through events or classes teaches people how to make wood signs and decor for their homes, or even as a gift. Paint the Grain has been in business for about 10 years and has had a physical storefront for about 8 of those years. I interviewed the business owner, Jasmine, about the elasticity of her products and services and the customer's response. I also asked her some questions about the elasticity of the materials she uses in order to run her business. Let's take a listen. This is like a two-part question. Have you had to raise prices, and what happened to your customer demand if you did have to raise prices?
So I did have to raise some prices because the cost of my wood went up. But I didn't raise it by too much. I just raised it by a couple of dollars. Um, and so the customer didn't necessarily feel it so much in a sense. They were kind of comfortable. They were okay. They probably didn't even notice, to be honest with you. But yes, I did raise my prices, but it was anywhere from like $2 to $3.
Are there products that are more inelastic or elastic than others?
Not too much. I think it just honestly it depends on what's popular with us. Right now, like resin and pressed flowers seems to be in demand. I think the value of the resin it's expected to be higher.
So, how do you know what your customers are willing to pay? And like, how do you decide your prices for everything?
So I base my prices based on the supplies and then also a teaching fee.
At least in the past or even currently, do your competitors affect your pricing?
They don't affect my pricing, but I have seen where I would have customers come in to my shop saying that my competitors, when they did exist, their prices were a lot higher than mine. Um, However, my competition, they were franchises, so they kind of had to be higher because they had to pay extra fees outside of what I have to pay. Um, so, but no, they never affected, it wasn't something I took into consideration.
Do you have like different demand based on like the seasons?
Definitely. Especially during Christmas time, a lot of people want to make gifts, and then a lot of groups come together to share the experience with each other. So it's definitely busier that time of year. And then for us during the summer, it's busy with the kids because their parents are looking for places to put their kids in camps. So it's busy for us during our camp weeks.
We then talked about the elasticity of one of her products in particular, a chunky knit blanket.
Chunky blankets, they're expensive, but they want it for the experience. So it's not something they're going to come in and make over and over again, like potentially a wood sign,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely they would come in and make the chunky blanket. Even if it's a higher price, they're coming in for the experience and being able to say, "Hey, I made this." That and then the resin
Mm-hmm.
when we do the beach resin, and I think that's also because I only offer them so many times per month.
Okay, let's talk about your materials and how you, as a customer, view certain things elastic or inelastic. Would you say that there's a certain material that you have to buy that's more elastic? Like, if the price is super high on it, you wouldn't buy it? Or is pretty much everything you buy for your studio inelastic because you need it because people are buying and wanting to make these products?
Definitely the wood is something I have to buy regardless, because that's probably about 85% of the projects that we make. The other pieces would be like certain cutting boards. if the price of the cutting boards, if the price of the cutting boards went up, then I just wouldn't buy them because we pour resin on top of the cutting boards. So the price of the cutting boards plus the price of the resin tends to make these, the prices that the customer pays pretty high. So if I go back and the cutting boards were raised higher, then I wouldn't buy them, and then I just would take that offer off my website and then find another board that, where I could still use resin in classes and still offer something resin.
Is there ever an instance where one type of wood is more expensive than the other, so you kind of instead go for a substitute?
The wood, it has to be the same type of wood because like we test our paint, we test our stencil on it. And I remember one time I got a different type of wood and it ruined the entire finished piece. So I don't know if there would be anything. The wood I could never substitute.
Now, when it comes to like the brands of specific things you use, like the resin or even like the sea glass that you use,
Mm-hmm.
if one brand raises their prices, are you looking for different brands as substitutes, or are you sticking with your same brand?
Yes, that I can. I've experienced several types of brands. So yeah, I definitely look for the lower price. So if when the brand that I love has increased their prices drastically, then I know that I trust different other brands that I've used in the past. So then I can substitute those.
Would you say that your business as a whole is elastic?
Yeah, no, yeah, I definitely think that it's elastic because then if my prices went up, then I don't think they would come anymore because I mean, if they did come, it would be a one-time thing and it wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be a repeat customer, which I have a lot of,
Mm-hmm.
where I probably wouldn't have that anymore. I would have it for a one-time thing and then I would probably never see them again.
Thank you so much for talking with me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Let's recap what we've learned. Elasticity explains how consumers respond to price changes. Something that's more elastic will have high sensitivity and tends to be a luxury. Something that's inelastic has low sensitivity to price change and tends to be a necessity, like gas. We saw some real-world examples from our interview with Jasmine, and we can now recognize how elasticity affects prices and consumers' responses. Thank you for listening. And don't forget, elasticity allows us to see how people make choices, and knowing this as a business owner can help you survive.